There's a lot of videos on YouTube about the red pill community, men going their own way, advice to men to avoid marriage and avoid single moms, and complaints from women that men aren't approaching anymore. Are women really the problem? I would say no. I don't think back in the days of colonial America that white men were the problem either in terms of stealing the land, from the Native Americans or bringing slaves over from Africa or other countries. Were the white men really the problem? No, they were probably mostly just good people who were taking advantage of the way the culture was and the way the laws were at the time. The laws were bad. There was no law against slavery. There was no law against taking the land of the Native Americans. People just did accordingly. I would say the same thing about modern culture in terms of what's going on with family law. The laws are bad. Women are just taking advantage of the terrain. They have an advantage in family law, and it's gotten to the point where now it's become culturally embedded. It's generational. The family law system in America, I'm just speaking to America right now. I'm not going to go beyond that. I know Canada is absolutely terrible. Is so disadvantageous toward men and so advantageous for women in terms of alimony and child support that it makes absolutely no rational sense for a man to get married in the current climate. Unfortunately, on YouTube, for example, well, that's where most of this community exists. There's a lot of women bashing. I see very little bashing of the laws, which have created the culture that we live in the same way that the laws created the culture of slavery and the culture of stealing essentially an entire country from the Native Americans. That was the law on the books. Until men start addressing the laws that are on the books in terms of family law and quit complaining about women, quit avoiding women, nothing's going to change. Men make up 50% of the voting population. Why not insist that politicians get into office through our vote and put things on the ballot in terms of our vote where there's no more alimony? There is no more child support. Parents get 50% custody each. Why not? Men make up 50% of the voting population. Let's make some changes. Nothing changed in terms of the civil rights in America until laws changed. There's nothing that's going to change in terms of the culture until the men start making some changes with their pocketbooks, with their voting, and with their actions. And the first step, of course, is to stop getting married. But that really, and of course, being on YouTube bashing women, well, that really doesn't solve anything. The only thing that's going to solve the problems with families in terms of almost 50% of kids being born out of wedlock and incredibly high divorce rates is to change the laws. It's good to hear that men are starting to go back to the Catholic Church. I'm not Catholic and don't really go to church, but that's a good step in the right direction. They're trying to get reestablished into some traditional values at least. And hopefully it will follow in terms of some organization and some grassroots in terms of changing laws. Because the way that the current family laws are in the United States of America is an absolute disgrace. And until marriage and dating stop penalizing men, it's not going to get any better. And men's opinion of women isn't going to get any better. I think probably historically, women were at a disadvantage in terms of marriage and family law. They were penalized for having children out of wedlock, penalized for wanting the divorce, And that probably wasn't right. But the pendulum has swung so far that now it's way disadvantageous toward men. And that's what's going on. Unfortunately, it's resulting in a lot of female bashing about hypergamy, single moms, and all this kind of stuff. I don't think that's really I don't think there's anything inherently biologically evil about women. I think that they're just responding to the culture at large. Men should also stop paying to send their daughters to these colleges that teach things that are not really helping the women. All it's just poisoning their minds with a bunch of hate. I mean, watch advertising. And I know I'm going to quit the video, but the advertising paints men in such a negative light, like just basically portraying in the majority of ads, white men in particular, as being complete idiots. Well, who are these executives and who are all these people who are making advertisements? Well, a bunch of new college graduates. The culture is perpetuating this idea that men are second-class citizens throughout advertising within the family law. Guys, stop voting for it. Stop bashing women and get together as a voting bloc and demand change and boycott universities and these companies that make these ridiculous advertisements that are depicting white men as being complete idiots. It makes absolutely no sense to bash women over all this. They're just taking advantage of the terrain. I hope that we can get together as a voting bloc and make some major changes to family law in this country. And just stop sending our kids to these universities that promote all this bullshit. That's my opinion. I got nothing against women or single moms or any of that stuff. I think we got to change the laws.